The year is 2016. A time when the whispers of cryptocurrencies were just beginning to echo beyond the most fervent tech enthusiasts. Bitcoin, still a fringe phenomenon, held a promise, a new frontier, untamed, unregulated. And at its very heart, a colossus stood, Bitfinex. This wasn't just another exchange, it was a titan, a fortress built on the bedrock of digital trust, processing an ocean of transactions daily. For many, Bitfinex was the gateway to this brave new world, a symbol of stability in an otherwise volatile digital ocean. Its vaults were believed impenetrable, its security, absolute. Investors, both seasoned and novice, entrusted their digital fortunes to its care, believing their Bitcoin was safe, tucked away in the deepest corners of the internet. But what they couldn't see, what no one truly understood yet, was the sheer, terrifying vulnerability lurking beneath the surface of this shimmering new economy. A single, unseen fracture, waiting for the perfect moment to crack wide open. This was not merely about digital money, this was about the very essence of trust in a world that was still struggling to define its own rules. The stakes were higher than anyone could possibly comprehend. Then, in the sweltering heat of August, the impossible happened. A tremor began, subtle at first, a phantom glitch. Users reported irregularities. Small delays. Then, the whispers turned to shouts, the shouts to a collective, horrified scream. The digital fortress of Bitfinex, once thought inviolable, was breached. Not a slow, creeping infiltration, but a sudden, violent rupture. Millions of Bitcoin, not thousands, but millions simply vanished. Gone. Dissolved into the vast, unknowable digital abyss. The world watched, stunned, as a staggering 119,756 Bitcoin, an amount so precise, yet so utterly incomprehensible, evaporated from customer accounts. In an instant. It was a heist of unprecedented scale, an audacious digital robbery that, at the time, was valued at a horrifying $72 million. $72 million, gone. Just like that. The headline screamed. Panic erupted. This wasn't just a hack, it was an earthquake that tore through the very foundations of the nascent cryptocurrency market. The digital equivalent of a bank vault blown open, its contents scattered to the winds. But these were not physical notes, these were lines of code, digital keys, stolen with an almost surgical precision, leaving behind a crater of fear and uncertainty. The immediate aftermath was pure chaos. Bitfinex halted all withdrawals, all trading. The digital gate slammed shut. Investors watched their screen balances plummet to zero, a cold, hard truth that sent shockwaves of despair through countless lives. The price of Bitcoin itself plunged by over 20% in a single day, a brutal, immediate testament to the scale of the crisis. Who was responsible? How could this happen? The questions hung heavy, unanswered, echoing through the hollowed-out corridors of the internet. A profound sense of violation settled over the entire crypto community. But what no one could have possibly foreseen, what makes this crime so chillingly prescient, is that $72 million was only the beginning of the story. As Bitcoin's value soared in the years that followed, climbing to dizzying, unimaginable heights, that stolen cash, those 119,756 Bitcoins, would swell in worth. From millions to hundreds of millions and eventually, to an astounding $4.5 billion. This wasn't just a hack. It was an audacious gamble, a crime against the future, setting the stage for one of the most incredible, bizarre, and utterly compelling stories of digital theft in history. The thief, or thieves, had not just stolen Bitcoin, they had stolen time. They had stolen the future. And the world was about to embark on a decades-long pursuit for ghosts in the machine. The digital world held its breath. A collective gasp, then, a wave of gut-wrenching panic. The news rippled out, not through headlines, but through encrypted messages, panicked tweets, and desperate forum posts. Billions. Stolen. Vanished. It wasn't just a hack, it was an earthquake in the nascent, volatile landscape of cryptocurrency. The silence that followed the initial chaos was deafening, punctuated only by the frantic clicks of keyboards and the rising dread in the hearts of investors, developers, and regulators alike. This wasn't some bank robbery with a getaway car and marked bills. Oh no. This was a phantom heist, executed in the ephemeral realm of ones and zeros, leaving behind an impossible trail. A fortune, equivalent to the GDP of small nations, had simply ceased to be where it was supposed to be. The immediate aftermath was a maelstrom of confusion and accusations, but beneath it all, a chilling realization began to set in: they had stolen not just money, but trust. And trust, in this new digital economy, was everything. The crypto community, a tapestry woven from innovation and audacious ambition, felt a sharp, collective betrayal. They looked to the authorities, to each other, to the very code itself, for answers. But the answers were elusive. Very elusive indeed. Investigators, initially hopeful, quickly found themselves staring into a digital abyss. The blockchain, the very technology lauded for its transparency and immutability, now presented an iron wall of anonymity. Each transaction, every movement of the stolen Bitcoin, was meticulously recorded. Yes. It was all there in the public ledger. But what did there even mean? Every transfer, every split, every consolidation was linked only to a string of alphanumeric characters, a wallet address. No names. No faces. No social security numbers. Just an unending asterisk chain of pseudonyms stretching into the digital ether. It was like watching a ghost move through a meticulously mapped forest, leaving footprints, but the footprints were made of smoke. You could see them, intellectually. You could confirm their existence. But they led nowhere. Not to a person. Not to a location. The stolen Bitcoin, now fractured into hundreds, perhaps thousands, of smaller transactions, was performing a digital ballet, constantly shifting, constantly morphing. Each movement was a whisper in the blockchain, an echo that promised insight, yet delivered only frustration. The sheer volume of data was overwhelming, a fire hose of information that paradoxically revealed nothing. The fortune had become a specter, a persistent, mocking presence in the digital realm. Untouchable. Unreachable. The initial despair was palpable. It seeped into the conference rooms, hung heavy in the air of dimly lit offices where screens glowed with incomprehensible code and tangled transaction graphs. How do you catch a thief when their loot has become a ghost in the machine? How do you pursue a fortune that exists everywhere and nowhere all at once? The traditional tools of law enforcement, surveillance, informants, physical tracking, were useless here. Completely irrelevant. They were hunting shadows in a labyrinth built of cryptography and code. Every lead seemed to dissipate into thin air. Every promising path dead-ended in another anonymous address. The scale of the theft, combined with the groundbreaking nature of the escape, bred a growing sense of helplessness. It was a perfect crime, executed with chilling precision, leveraging the very principles of decentralization that crypto enthusiasts championed. The stolen Bitcoin wasn't just gone, it had melted into the vast, intricate network of the blockchain, becoming indistinguishable from the legitimate flow of digital assets. A digital needle in a digital haystack the size of the world. This wasn't just a case anymore. It was a terrifying precedent. A stark, chilling warning. And for those tasked with unraveling it, it felt like an impossible mission. A riddle with no answer. At least, that's what it seemed like in those early, agonizing days. For years, the stolen billions from the Bitfinex hack lingered in the digital ether, a phantom fortune, controlled by a digital ghost. The world wondered, who were these shadowy figures, cunning enough to orchestrate one of history's most audacious cyber thefts? Was it a sophisticated nation-state? A notorious criminal syndicate? The speculation was rampant, the fear palpable. But the truth, when it finally emerged, was far more unsettling. Because the alleged masterminds behind this multi-billion-dollar heist were not the faceless hackers of our nightmares. They were a couple. An unlikely couple. Ilya Lichtenstein, the self-proclaimed tech entrepreneur, and Heather Morgan, known online as a Razzlekhan, a colorful, self-styled rapper, writer, and public speaker, whose persona seemed ripped straight from a satirist's fever dream. Living seemingly ordinary lives in a downtown Manhattan apartment, surrounded by pets and brimming with creative aspirations. Who could possibly suspect them asterisk? Their public image was a kaleidoscope of quirkiness, ambition, and New York hustle. But beneath that vibrant, often eccentric veneer, lay a secret. A secret guarded with meticulous care, hiding a criminal enterprise of a truly colossal scale. Ilya, the analytical mind, reportedly a founder of several tech startups, projected an image of a somewhat awkward, yet earnest, blockchain enthusiast. He was the quieter half, the strategic thinker, perhaps even the architect of the digital pathways they would allegedly exploit. Then there was Heather Razzlekhan. Her online presence was a blaring siren of individuality, rapping about anything from entrepreneurship to dating, posting flamboyant selfies, dispensing business advice. She was the outward-facing personality, a force of nature designed to captivate, and perhaps, to distract. Their social media feeds painted a picture of a couple deeply entrenched in the New York tech and art scene, sharing their lives, their dreams, their entire existence with the world. They were accessible. They were memorable. They were, in many ways, unmistakable. Yet, the question hangs heavy in the air: was this public spectacle a genuine reflection of their souls, or a carefully constructed performance, a smoke screen designed to keep eyes diverted from the quiet, calculating intellect that was allegedly moving billions of dollars in stolen Bitcoin? This was not just casual criminality. This was a sustained, sophisticated effort to not only steal but to launder an unprecedented sum of cryptocurrency, meticulously moving it through a labyrinthine network of transactions. Every tweet, every rap video, every public appearance, could they have been part of a grander illusion? A distraction so potent, so believable that no one would ever connect the dots between the quirky New York couple and the digital titans of theft. The irony is crushing. The sheer audacity of living so openly, so visibly while allegedly orchestrating such a monumental crime, defies conventional logic. We are about to peel back the layers of that carefully curated facade, to look beyond the vibrant public personas and into the dark, methodical minds that allegedly dared to challenge the very foundations of digital security. This is where the curtain begins to fall. This is where the unlikely architects are finally revealed. Imagine two lives. Two completely disparate realities, coexisting, intertwined, yet designed to be mutually exclusive in the public eye. On one side, a flamboyant, self-proclaimed viral rapper known as Razzlekhan. Her music? A bizarre, often cringe-inducing melange of capitalist anthems and questionable rhymes, delivered with an almost desperate plea for attention. On the other, a seemingly astute, though somewhat introverted, tech entrepreneur, the self-styled crypto king, navigating the complex, often opaque world of blockchain. These were the public personas of Heather Morgan and Ilya Lichtenstein. But beneath these carefully crafted facades, a far darker, infinitely more audacious story was unfolding. A story of cunning, of conspiracy, and of a staggering, unprecedented theft of billions. Heather Morgan, as Razzlekhan, was a spectacle of calculated chaos. Her YouTube videos were a masterclass in performative oddity, a barrage of neon wigs, questionable dance moves, and lyrics extolling the virtues of financial empowerment and entrepreneurial grit. Versace rack. It's all about the stacks, she'd rap, utterly oblivious, or perhaps, brilliantly aware of how her bizarre antics deflected any serious scrutiny. She presented herself as a speaker, a writer, a business guru, always on the verge of breakout success, always just shy of true recognition. It was a performance so over the top, so unbelievably awkward, that it almost defied belief. And that, it seems, was precisely the point. Who would suspect that this woman, prancing in front of a camera, rapping about money, was allegedly moving billions of dollars in stolen Bitcoin? It was a smokescreen of epic proportions, a blinding flash of digital noise designed to drown out the quiet, methodical clicks of a keyboard orchestrating one of the largest financial crimes in history. Meanwhile, Ilya Lichtenstein operated in a different dimension of their elaborate deception. He was the quieter counterpart, the technical brains behind the alleged operation. An investor, a founder, a seemingly legitimate figure in the cutthroat startup ecosystem. He was the crypto king, a moniker that now rings with chilling irony. While Razzlekhan drew all eyes to her chaotic, attention-grabbing spectacle, Ilya worked in the shadows, his digital expertise the alleged engine driving their clandestine enterprise. Together, they formed an unlikely, yet disturbingly effective, partnership in crime. One, a loud, undeniable distraction, the other, a silent, calculating force. This duality, this astonishing double life, was not merely a quirk of personality. It was a deliberate strategy. An intricate web of public performance designed to keep the authorities, the public, and indeed, the entire world, from ever connecting the dots between the absurdity of Razzlekhan and the cold, hard, undeniable reality of a multi-billion-dollar Bitcoin heist. For years, the stolen Bitcoin remained * elusive star. A ghost in the machine, mocking traditional law enforcement. $4.5 billion, a staggering sum, had seemingly * evaporated * into the digital ether, leaving behind only the cold, hard, cryptographic proof of its theft. But where did it go? How could something so tangible, so valuable, become so utterly * untraceable *? This wasn't a bank vault robbery, leaving physical clues like fingerprints or getaway car exhaust. This was a new frontier of crime, demanding a new breed of investigator. The world needed * digital bloodhound star. Men and women, who could speak the arcane language of code, read the subtle whispers of the blockchain, and hunt down phantom funds that existed only as entries in a distributed ledger. This wasn't just about money anymore, it was about proving that no crime, not even one hidden behind layers of digital anonymity, could truly escape justice. The game was on. And the stakes were astronomical. Their hunt began not with magnifying glasses or witness interviews, but with raw data, the immutable, public ledger of the Bitcoin blockchain itself. For the uninitiated, Bitcoin transactions appear as a chaotic tangle of alphanumeric strings. But for the FBI, and crucially, for the cyber specialists of the IRS Criminal Investigation Division, the real pioneers in this space, the blockchain was a treasure map. Every single transaction, every movement of every stolen Satoshi, was recorded. The challenge was immense, tracing millions of individual transactions, often broken into smaller pieces, moving across countless wallets. Then came the real obstacle, the mixers and tumblers. These sophisticated services were designed to purposefully obfuscate the money trail, blending stolen coins with legitimate ones, shuffling them like a deck of cards, and spitting them out through different addresses. It was a digital tornado, an intentional act of financial cryptography designed to render forensic analysis impossible. Many thought it was impossible. But these tenacious investigators refused to yield. They understood that even in the most complex digital dance, patterns emerge star. And so, the painstaking, almost obsessive work began. It was a marathon of data analysis, requiring specialized software, advanced algorithms, and an unflinching commitment to detail. The investigators developed techniques to unmix the transactions, identifying common inputs and outputs, analyzing timing patterns, and clustering seemingly disparate addresses. They weren't just following lines on a screen, they were rebuilding a criminal narrative, pixel by painful pixel. Each breakthrough, no matter how small, was a triumph, a momentary glimpse through the digital fog. They learned to see the telltale signs of mixer exits, tracing funds as they were consolidated or funneled into exchanges, and slowly, relentlessly connecting seemingly anonymous digital entities to real-world identities. The phrase digital anonymity began to ring hollow. Because while a name might not be immediately visible, the fingerprints of behavior, the patterns, the timing, the consolidations, were always there. The phantom funds, once thought forever lost, were now leaving faint, traceable echoes. The net was tightening. The digital bloodhounds were closing in. They thought they were untouchable. Hidden behind layers of encryption, anonymous blockchain transactions, and the sheer, mind-boggling scale of their stolen fortune. Ilya Lichtenstein and Heather Morgan had pulled off one of the greatest digital heists in history, a colossal theft of Bitcoin, valued at billions. But even the most meticulously planned, technologically sophisticated crime carries a fatal flaw. Human nature. The inherent need to spend star. The undeniable desire to live star. And in that desire, a crack began to form in their seemingly impenetrable fortress. A tiny, almost imperceptible fissure, invisible to them, but forming the very first point of entry for the determined, patient eyes of the law. They believed they had mastered the art of disappearance. They were profoundly wrong. It wasn't a single, spectacular blunder. There was no Hollywood-style dropped wallet. No panicked, incriminating confession. Instead, the trail began with a whisper, then a faint, growing echo. Imagine trying to hide a mountain of cash, then starting to spend it, dollar by dollar, here and there. For Ilya and Heather, that the dollar was a fraction of a Bitcoin, cashed out, laundered, then spent star. We're talking about small, observable withdrawals, amounts that, on their own, seemed insignificant compared to the billions they controlled. But when you move millions of dollars through countless, traceable transactions, even minor transfers begin to paint a picture. Investigators meticulously track these digital drips and drops. A $500 withdrawal here, a $2,000 electronic gift card purchase there, an online gaming subscription. A pattern, subtle at first, began to ominously emerge. Each seemingly innocent transaction, a grain of sand, contributing to a slowly forming dune. These were not the lavish, over-the-top expenditures one might expect from crypto billionaires. These were the activities of people trying to normalize their illicit gains, to make them blend into the everyday digital economy. But the blockchain, that immutable ledger, remembers everything. And it was in this granular detail, these faint digital footprints, that their undoing truly began. The FBI, the IRS, other federal agencies. They weren't looking for one grand, incriminating transaction. They were looking for the consistency star. The habit star. They were piecing together a mosaic, not from large, obvious tiles, but from countless, tiny shards. Every gift card redeemed, every online purchase made, every small sum withdrawn and filtered through an ever more complex web of shell companies and fake identities, each left a digital fingerprint. These weren't anonymous ghosts. These were individuals making choices star. Choices that, over time, formed a discernible signature star. The investigators, equipped with sophisticated analytics and unyielding determination, followed each thread. They cross-referenced data points, tracked IP addresses, analyzed spending patterns. Slowly, painfully, the seemingly disparate crumbs began to coalesce. A damning financial narrative was taking shape. A narrative that pointed, inexorably, towards Ilya and Heather. The net was tightening. The initial illusion of perfect anonymity was dissolving, revealing, brick by painful brick, the very real identities of the couple who thought they had beaten the system. Their own small, everyday decisions became their biggest betrayals. In the sprawling, labyrinthine world of the blockchain, where identities hide behind complex strings of code and transactions vanish into an ocean of data, the task felt, at times, insurmountable. For years, the perpetrators of the Bitfinex heist had existed as ghosts, anonymous, untraceable, their stolen billions flowing through an intricate, ever-shifting network of wallets and mixers. The digital breadcrumbs they left behind were not obvious trails, but scattered, microscopic fragments, lost in a storm of a million other data points. It was a forensic challenge unlike any other, demanding a new breed of investigator, armed not just with intuition, but with cutting-edge algorithms and an unwavering patience. The FBI's specialized cyber forensics units, alongside an elite team of blockchain analysts, stared into the abyss, searching for a pattern, a weakness, anything that could transform a faceless digital address into a tangible, real person. Every dead end, every false lead, only fueled their resolve. They knew the money had to go somewhere. It couldn't simply disappear into the ether, not forever. The question wasn't if they would find a link, but when. The pressure mounted, but so did the quiet, relentless hum of the supercomputers, crunching data, looking for the telltale signs of human error, human greed. Then, slowly, almost imperceptibly, the tide began to turn. It wasn't one grand revelation, but a painstaking, meticulous process of stitching together thousands of tiny, seemingly unrelated clues. Sophisticated graph analysis software began to map the flow of funds, revealing patterns invisible to the human eye. They started to see the subtle, rhythmic pulses of money moving through mixing services, designed to obscure origins, but even these sophisticated tools left faint, digital echoes. Analysts delved deep into the couple's modus operandi, scrutinizing every byte, every timestamp. Was there a preference for certain exchanges? A consistent, albeit minute, fraction of a Bitcoin always left behind. They tracked microtransactions, small transfers often used to test waters or to reroute funds, and it was within these seemingly insignificant movements that they began to discern a faint, recurring signature. A digital fingerprint. The goal was no longer just to follow the money, but to de-anonymize the user's of that money. They exploited vulnerabilities in public ledgers, cross-referenced data from leaked databases, and even scoured open-source intelligence, social media, forgotten forum posts, any digital artifact that could connect an anonymous wallet to a real-world entity. It was like peeling back layers of an onion, one transparent skin at a time. And as those digital layers peeled away, a terrifying truth began to emerge for the unsuspecting couple. The investigation wasn't just confined to the ethereal realm of code anymore. The digital threads, once so abstract, were beginning to weave into the very fabric of their physical lives. IP addresses, briefly unmasked through a VPN glitch, hinted at geographical locations. Patterns in their crypto spending, even on legitimate platforms, started to align with online profiles and known identities. It was a gradual, chilling realization for the investigators. The seemingly anonymous Bitcoin addresses were not just random strings, they were becoming tethered to names, faces, and physical addresses. A purchase here, a subscription there, a brief interaction on a platform that required KYC, know your customer, verification, each was a brick in the wall closing in around them. The once impenetrable shield of the blockchain was now riddled with pinholes, allowing the light of real-world scrutiny to pierce through. The hunt was no longer just on screen. It had spilled into the streets, into the very air they breathed. The gathering storm was here. And it was about to break. For years, the stolen Bitcoin remained a ghost in the machine. A vast, phantom fortune, tantalizingly close, yet utterly beyond reach. Over $4.5 billion, locked away in an invisible digital vault, guarded by the most powerful encryption known to man. Law enforcement had the culprits, yes. They had the digital breadcrumbs, the meticulously traced transactions. But the money itself? It was like knowing a treasure chest existed, knowing who buried it, but possessing no map, no shovel, and certainly no key. The private keys, those unique, cryptographic sequences, were the absolute barrier. Without them, the Bitcoin was nothing more than an unspendable ledger entry. A digital mirage. The very nature of cryptocurrency, designed for ultimate security and anonymity, had now become the investigator's most formidable adversary. Every lead, every interrogation, every seized device led back to the same frustrating impasse. How do you force open a lock that exists only as pure mathematics? How do you retrieve an asset that, by its very design, grants absolute control only to its owner, or to someone possessing their private key? It felt impossible. A Gordian knot, intricately woven from cryptographic algorithms, human deceit, and the sheer, overwhelming complexity of a decentralized ledger. But the agents, fueled by an unwavering resolve, refused to accept defeat. They understood that somewhere, buried deep within the couple's digital lives, their forgotten files, their discarded thoughts, their last, desperate attempts at concealment, lay the only thing that could break this stalemate. The key to the kingdom. The search was methodical. Painstaking. It was a forensic dissection of every hard drive, every cloud account, every encrypted message, every single piece of digital detritus left in the wake of their audacious crime. Days blurred into weeks, weeks into months. False leads mounted. Frustration simmered. Imagine sifting through a library the size of the internet, searching for a single, specific sentence, knowing that sentence is the only thing that matters. But then, on a glimmer. Not a grand revelation, not a sudden flash of insight, but a slow, creeping realization born from tireless cross-referencing and the meticulous reconstruction of fragmented data. A hidden file. A seemingly innocuous string of characters. A password manager, perhaps, or a file tucked away in a subdirectory designed to look like routine system data. It was subtle. It was almost missed. But one tenacious analyst, pushing through the fatigue, saw something others had overlooked. A pattern. A reference. A connection to a known, encrypted wallet address. Could it be? Could this small, almost insignificant digital artifact, this single, obscure sequence of alphanumeric characters, be the very thing they'd spent years chasing? The air in the forensics lab grew thick with anticipation. Every screen became a focal point. Every breath held. This was it, the moment of truth. The command line blinked. The analysts typed with a mixture of practiced precision and trembling hands. One character after another. The private key, extracted from its digital hiding place, was now being fed into the system. The stolen fortune lay dormant, a vast, inert mass of data, waiting. Waiting for the *right command. The right signature. The right key. The second stretched into an eternity. A deafening silence fell over the room. Everyone knew the stakes. This wasn't just about recovering stolen funds, it was about proving that even in the labyrinthine world of cryptocurrency, justice could, an would prevail. Then, a faint were from the servers, a data packet sent, or a network confirmation. And then, a message flashed across the screen. Access granted. A collective gasp. A surge of adrenaline. There, on display, was the undeniable evidence, account balances. Transaction histories. The numbers were staggering. Billions of dollars. Not a fragment. Not a portion. But the lion's share of the stolen Bitfinex Bitcoin, now visible, accounted for, and, critically, retrievable. The key had worked. The digital vault, once impenetrable, had finally yielded its secrets. The hunt was over. The game had changed. And the $4.5 billion bounty, once a symbol of audacious theft, was now firmly, irrefutably, back in the hands of the law. For years, the architects of the Bitfinex hack, a theft of staggering proportions, remained phantom figures, ghosts in the digital ether. But while the world pondered their identities, Ilya Lichtenstein and Heather Morgan lived a life of flamboyant, if somewhat peculiar, public display in the heart of New York City. They were aspiring tech entrepreneurs, a quirky rapper, a self-proclaimed crocodile of Wall Street, a carefully constructed facade that belied a secret so immense, so audacious, it defied belief. They moved through their days, seemingly oblivious, or perhaps just arrogantly confident, that the vast, stolen fortune hidden in their digital wallets would remain forever out of reach. But unseen, unheard, the long arm of the law was slowly, painstakingly, closing its iron grip. Every Bitcoin transaction, every digital breadcrumb, was being traced, analyzed, and mapped by a dedicated team of cyber forensic experts. The net, invisible for so long, was now taut. Then, on a seemingly ordinary Tuesday morning in February 2022, the hammer fell. It was a raid orchestrated with surgical precision, a sudden, shattering intrusion into their carefully curated existence. Federal agents, armed with warrants and an undeniable sense of purpose, descended upon their Wall Street apartment. The surprise was absolute. The couple, caught entirely off guard, could only watch as their world, built on a foundation of lies and laundered crypto, crumbled around them. The agents weren't just looking for clues, they were looking for keys. And what they found inside that apartment, tucked away in the digital recesses of their devices, was nothing short of explosive. Not just evidence of their lavish spending, or their digital shenanigans, but the incontrovertible proof, the private keys, to over 119,000 Bitcoin, a fortune that had swelled in value to an astounding $4.5 billion. It was a discovery that would send shockwaves through the financial world, a moment of profound revelation. The official announcement from the Department of Justice resonated across every major news outlet. The largest cryptocurrency seizure in history had just taken place. This wasn't just a recovery, it was a watershed moment, a declaration that even in the shadowy, decentralized world of cryptocurrency, there was no true anonymity for those who sought to steal. The identities of the hackers, long shrouded in mystery, were finally, irrevocably exposed. Ilya Lichtenstein and Heather Morgan, a couple whose public personas ranged from tech eccentricity to aspiring hip-hop artistry, were now, unequivocally, the alleged masterminds behind the Bitcoin heist. The revelation was stunning. Who were these people, really? And how had they, an unlikely duo, managed to orchestrate a crime of such staggering scale, only to be brought down by the very trail of digital breadcrumbs they thought they had so cleverly obscured? The chase was over. The heist was solved. But the questions, the profound questions about their motives, their methods, and the very nature of digital crime, were only just beginning. Their public personas were meticulously crafted. A tapestry of mundane normalcy, woven with threads of tech enthusiasm, quirky art, and an almost aggressively unremarkable existence. But beneath that carefully constructed surface, lay a truth so astonishing, so utterly brazen, it defied belief. This wasn't just a simple lie. It was a universe of deception, a grand, audacious play acted out on the world stage, with billions of stolen dollars as their silent co-star. For years, Ilya Lichtenstein and Heather Morgan walked among us. They shopped in our stores. They attended our parties. They shared their lives, or what appeared to be their lives, on social media. All the while, they were sitting atop a digital mountain of ill-gotten gains, the silent architects of one of the largest financial heists in history. How did they do it? How did two seemingly ordinary individuals orchestrate such an elaborate charade? The sheer audacity is breathtaking. It speaks to a level of cunning, a psychological fortitude, or perhaps, a profound detachment, that few can comprehend. They weren't just hiding money, they were hiding themselves. They were living a lie so pervasive, it became the very fabric of their existence. The logistics of maintaining such an illusion were staggering. Imagine the constant vigilance required, the endless permutations of alibis and cover stories. Every social interaction, every purchase, every casual conversation was a potential tripwire. Did a flicker of true wealth escape their eyes? Did an expensive habit betray their carefully cultivated image? They had to build intricate financial pipelines, shuffling stolen Bitcoin through layers of obfuscation, using darknet marketplaces, shell companies, and fake identities, a digital labyrinth designed to confuse and conceal. Their days weren't just spent managing money, they were spent performing normalcy. Heather, the self-proclaimed crocodile of Wall Street, rapping about capitalism and confidence, while simultaneously overseeing the clandestine movement of hundreds of millions. Ilya, the quiet coder, building a tech company, a respectable facade for a man secretly orchestrating vast digital wealth transfers. Every decision was a calculated risk. Every moment, a tightrope walk above a chasm of exposure. The pressure must have been immense, a suffocating cloak of paranoia, constantly whispering the threat of discovery. Yet, they persevered. They thrived on it, perhaps. The thrill of the gamble, the exhilaration of the escape. What kind of minds could endure such a prolonged, high-stakes deception? Was it a shared delusion, a symbiotic relationship fueling their collective hubris? Or was it a cold, calculating partnership built on mutual interest and a chilling disregard for the consequences? The truth, as it slowly emerged, painted a picture not just of financial crime, but of a profound psychological schism. They were two people living two parallel lives, the mundane, often quirky public figures, and the shadowy puppet masters of a vast criminal enterprise. This duality, this constant performance, must have eroded the very essence of who they were. The lines between their true selves and their fabricated identities blurred, then dissolved entirely. When the fabric of their deception finally began to fray, when the authorities closed in, the unraveling was swift and brutal. The illusion shattered, revealing not just the billions they had stolen, but the sheer, breathtaking audacity of their years-long charade. It wasn't just a heist, it was a profound act of betrayal, a stark reminder that even in our interconnected world, the most elaborate secrets can be hidden, maintained, and lived right under our very noses. Their story stands as a chilling testament to the seductive power of deception and the terrifying depths of human cunning. The dust had settled on the sensational arrests, a couple, apprehended, accused of laundering billions. But the story was far from over. Their capture, while a monumental victory for law enforcement, was merely the first tremor in an earthquake whose aftershocks would ripple across the digital world and beyond. For the victims of the Bitfinex hack, that fateful August day in 2016 had stolen more than just their crypto, it had stolen their peace of mind, their trust, and for many, their financial futures. They had lived for years in the shadow of a colossal, unresolved theft, haunted by the specter of their lost fortunes. Then came the news. A recovery. A significant portion of the stolen Bitcoin seized. It was a moment of profound, complicated relief, a vindication that justice, though slow, was not blind. Yet, even with the return of some assets, the emotional scars remained. The psychological toll of living through such a profound violation, the agonizing weight, the constant question of whether their wealth would ever truly be returned, these were wounds that transcended mere financial restitution. This heist was a stark reminder that behind every line of code, every digital transaction, were real people, with real lives, irrevocably altered by the actions of criminals hiding in the shadows of the blockchain. It was a human tragedy, writ large across the ledger of the internet. This unprecedented recovery also sent a jolt through the cybersecurity landscape. For years, the anonymity of cryptocurrencies had been touted as an impenetrable shield for illicit activity, making the tracking and seizure of stolen digital assets seem like a pipe dream. The Bitcoin heist shattered that illusion. It forced a fundamental re-evaluation of how digital currencies are secured, how vulnerabilities are exploited, and how quickly the landscape of cybercrime is evolving. Companies, exchanges, and individual users alike were forced to confront a chilling reality: no digital fortress was truly impervious. This case highlighted the sophisticated cat-and-mouse game between hackers and defenders, underscoring the urgent need for more robust security protocols, advanced blockchain analytics, and relentless intelligence gathering. It wasn't just about preventing the next hack, it was about demonstrating that even when the seemingly impossible happened, law enforcement possessed the tools and the will to pursue and recover. The message was clear: the digital Wild West was rapidly shrinking, and the long arm of the law was learning to navigate its complex terrain. And so, the reverberations reached the highest echelons of power. Governments, initially bewildered by the decentralized, borderless nature of cryptocurrencies, were now compelled to act. The sheer scale of the Bitcoin heist, billions in stolen assets, recovered through meticulous, cutting-edge digital forensics, served as an undeniable catalyst. This wasn't merely a niche tech story, it was a matter of national security, financial stability, and the very rule of law in a rapidly digitizing world. Regulatory bodies scrambled to draft new frameworks, to establish clearer guidelines for cryptocurrency exchanges, to combat money laundering on an unprecedented scale. International cooperation became not just desirable, but essential, as the cross-border nature of cybercrime demanded a unified front. The case set a powerful precedent: digital assets, once considered untraceable, were now demonstrably recoverable, stripping away a layer of perceived anonymity that had long emboldened criminals. This wasn't just about one couple, one heist, it was a defining moment, a clear demarcation point that ushered in a new, more regulated, and profoundly more challenging era for digital crime, and for those who dared to commit it. The game, for cybercriminals, had changed. Forever. The world watched, captivated, as Ilya Lichtenstein and Heather Morgan were finally brought to heel, their brazen digital escapade unmasked. But the handcuffs were only the beginning. This wasn't just another financial crime, this was a quantum leap into a new legal frontier. The courts, traditionally slow, deliberate, now faced a crime committed at the speed of light, in the shadow of a decentralized network. The colossal sum they allegedly stole, the staggering $4.5 billion in Bitcoin, frozen, yes. But the process of untangling it? of proving intent beyond a shadow of a doubt in the nascent, often bewildering world of blockchain forensics that demands a precision previously unimaginable. Every digital footprint, every coded transaction, becomes a piece of a vast, complex jigsaw puzzle, painstakingly assembled by prosecutors learning new rules on the fly. Their alleged acts, audacious, unprecedented, now subject to the grinding, relentless machinery of human justice. The question isn't just about conviction, but about the very definition of justice, when the crime itself transcends traditional borders and currencies. Beyond the courtroom drama lies the soul of justice, restitution. For the thousands of victims of the Bitfinex hack, the promise of recovered funds is a lifeline, a glimmer of hope after years of despair. But the path to returning that wealth is tortuous. The sheer logistics of distributing such a vast, fluctuating digital hoard involves legal battles spanning years, an endless dance between valuation, seizure, and distribution across an intricate global web. And what about the legal precedents being forged here? Every motion filed, every ruling handed down, shapes the future of cybercrime prosecution for decades to come. How do you measure culpability when a single click can move billions across continents in an instant? How do you enforce jurisdiction when the criminal enterprise has no fixed address, no traditional borders? This case isn't merely about two individuals, it's a litmus test for the entire global legal system, struggling to adapt to a world where money is code, and anonymity a powerful, dangerous tool. It's a stark reminder that the pursuit of illicit wealth, in this new digital wilderness, demands an equally relentless, adaptable pursuit of justice. The Bitcoin heist leaves us with questions, haunting, profound questions. How truly secure is anything in our interconnected age? Can technology, designed for freedom and decentralization, ever truly be tamed by the law? What lessons are we learning about the seductive power of easy riches and the dark allure of digital anonymity? As the legal saga unfolds, slowly, deliberately, it casts a long shadow over the entire crypto landscape. It's a cautionary tale, etched not in stone, but in lines of code, a testament to human ingenuity misused, and the enduring, fundamental need for order. The story of Ilya and Heather, of the stolen Bitcoin, is far from over. It's an unfinished symphony, playing out in courtrooms, in digital ledgers, and in the collective consciousness of a world grappling with its own technological adolescence. And as long as there is value, there will be those who seek to exploit it. And as long as there is exploitation, the quest for justice, in this ever-evolving digital age, will remain an eternal, unyielding battle.